Hi, and welcome to the Sassy Merit podcast, where we dive into the most controversial topics in the equestrian world.
We give our unfiltered opinions and say the things that others won't.
With 4 hosts from different backgrounds, we bring a mix of perspectives, experiences, and even a few debates.
So saddle up, it's going to be a fun one.
Before we get started, we just want to share a quick disclaimer. While we love to keep things light and fun on the podcast, and yes, there will still be a few laughs, today's topic is a bit more serious. We'll be discussing euthanasia in the equestrian world, which we know is a tough subject for many, but we promise to handle it with as much care, compassion and sensitivity as we can, while still keeping the vibe supportive and as lighthearted as possible. Our goal is to have a thoughtful, honest conversation with plenty of laughs along the way, because sometimes that's how we cope with tough topics. So grab a cup of tea, take a deep breath, and join us as we navigate this conversation with kindness, understanding, and a few smiles.
Hi, and welcome to the Sassy Merit podcast. I'm Amy.
I'm Ellie.
And I'm Robin.
And today's topic is euthanasia for the benefit of the horse. This topic is going to be a bit heavier with less laughs, but it is an important topic, and I think one that isn't talked about enough, and a lot of people will keep their horse alive for selfish reasons when it should be euthanized, and I think we gotta get into it. I think we'll go to you, Ellie, first, because you have two different sides of this story. We'll not get into the sad side if you don't want to, but you also nearly were in the situation where you had to make this decision.
Yeah. So whenever Benny was having really severe lameness issues, we just couldn't get to the bottom of it for how long was that? That was months
and months, yeah.
And we tried so many options. He'd had so many professionals look at him, and it was getting to the stage where, you know, we were weighing up options of, I was being told by some professionals, just throw him out in the field, and see if he can sort of fix himself, go right. And then, you know, I'd had discussions with my vet about, I don't feel comfortable just turning my horse out into the field and just letting him live in pain. And I'm also not comfortable making him live his life on pain relief. And even at that, he would have been on such a high dose to make him feel sound. So I wasn't really comfortable with knowing that he was just going to be out there in pain. The field would have had to been like flat as anything. Mm-hmm. You know, there couldn't have been any mud or anything like that.
Was he a horse that struggled in turnout as well for a while when you first got him?
Well, to be fair, whenever he struggled in turnout, as in, I think he was just...
He's anxious, wasn't he, being out?
Yeah, he was just quite... He didn't settle very easily. Mm-hmm. And he just sort of was a bit... Yeah. But by the time this was all happening, he had sort of settled himself. Like, he was all right out, and he was all right alone or with mates or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I sort of did shop around looking for different retirement options for him. But there was nowhere that was going to offer, like, no mud, flat as a pancake, like, you know, and he is a sports horse. He's not really like a sturdy little cob that could weather himself out. And
he's accident prone as hell.
Yeah, that's also that. So I just, like, the conversation did come up, and I was like, listen, if I spoke to the vet and he agreed with me, I was like, I'm not comfortable letting this horse suffer, and if we can't get to the bottom of this soon, you know, throw everything at him now, because if we can't get to the bottom of it soon, this is going to be my only choice. And I was okay with that. I wasn't okay with that, but I was happy that was the decision that had to be made.
That's a very selfless decision, though. I think that's a hard conclusion to come to.
He was 4.
Yeah, and that's what makes it even worse.
So young, yeah.
Like, he's literally a baby. His life has barely started, and you were like nearly having to put him down.
Yeah, but it was just, and then people were saying, like, well, you know, he's so young. Like, why are you doing that? And I was like, but why? Why would you have him out and suffering?
In pain, yeah.
Like, if it was your horse, how could you bear knowing?
I really think that there is worse options out there than a horse being put to sleep.
Yeah.
There's definitely worse fates than a horse being put to sleep.
Yeah, and if that had been, like, obviously he's 100% now, he's flying, you know, but that was, I threw everything at him, like every penny I had, every professional I could find, like everyone looked at this horse, and do you know, it was even down to like you helping with him at the yard and all, like, you know, it was like all hands on deck.
Yeah.
And he was box rested for a month, and I hate box rest, and he did struggle with that at the start quite a bit, and he struggled coming out of it as well. But it was, you know, box rest for a month or put down. I know people are very against box rest, and they might say, if it's 6 months to a year of box rest, do you go down the euthanasia path? But I thought the month was justified in his case, because the month of box rest didn't fix the problem, but it helped.
Helped, like, find what the issue was.
You sort of went through the process of elimination, and you know, with so many professionals with so many different angles on it.
I think if your option is try everything or put to sleep,
Yeah.
I think a month of box rest is definitely justified.
Yeah.
There.
That's how I was saying it, because I know people are so against box rest.
Yeah.
And, you know, people were saying, like, God, that's a lot of effort for you. And I'm like, God, it's going to be a lot of effort to kill my
Yeah.
horse. Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, whenever you... The things people were saying to me, I was like, what is going on? And then there was people saying, like, don't bother. Like, why are you throwing all this money at him? Why are you throwing all these professionals at him? Like, just put him down now. Like,
I think you were right to try, because if I was in the same situation, I'd want to try. Like, I'd want to exhaust my options.
Yeah.
Unless it was like severe pain and you could see that your horse didn't want to try.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I think
Yeah.
that's
Because
different.
he was bright in himself.
And his case was different as well because he was young.
Yeah, there was
And
a
he
better
was-
prognosis there.
Yeah, and I sort of, in my head, I was like, if I can just figure out what it is,
Yeah.
we can treat it. It was
Yeah.
just figuring out what the issue was, because one thing had snowballed into so many things.
Yeah.
Do you know?
So it's like if you find one fix
And you need to
and
trace
then
it
you've
back.
like 15 other things that you find
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah. So it was really shit. Like, it was a nightmare situation. And then everyone else's input on it. Like, some people are telling you, don't bother, put him down. Some people are saying, you know, why, throw him out to the field, let him suffer. Like, and you're like, what?
But then, do you know, I was coming on to this podcast, like this episode, ready to be like, you know, you should do it if it's pointing to that. But then your story there now is like,
Yeah.
what happens if you do it and then you could have saved him and could have fixed him?
But you wouldn't know that. You
Yeah.
wouldn't know the what
But then
if
is
there.
that something that people will struggle with then? They're always guessing, could I have done more?
It is. It is
yeah.
difficult. Like, obviously, with the nursing side of things, I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of it in smaller animals as
And
well.
science is always changing.
Yeah.
There's always new developments on
And,
things.
you know, the issue is some people just can't see past the love they have for their pet.
Well, yeah, this is where I get heated.
Okay.
Like, this is what annoys me is like the
Keeping
wee,
an animal alive for your selfish gain
the
because you don't want
wee
to say
sad
goodbye.
old pony who gave you everything and
And you can't even give it peace.
you
and
can't even
it's
give
last.
peace and it's sore and it's old
And then
it's-
they end up going in a really traumatic, miserable
yeah,
way.
Yeah.
what they do
shouldn't
not
have.
deserve.
Yeah, they should be going like a lovely sunny day,
Yeah.
tummy full of grass. you
How do
know.
we feel about
things
end
like
on a
that.
good day?
I would rather end a day too soon than
Yeah.
a day too
I
late.
couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's true actually. And then you do see ones where not only they were a day late, they were years late and
Yeah.
the pony suffered.
But they are... I understand the thought process behind it. Like, you
See,
love
I
this
don't.
pet.
This is where your expertise in vet nursing can actually come in here because I personally don't. I'm like, if your horse or pony has given you loads over these years, like done this
Especially
with you, done
if
that
they
with you.
are older and
Yeah.
it is harder to treat something that comes up or like their body is rapidly declining.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like,
You know, they're struggling to keep weight and then all their teeth are gone and like then they get really sick and it's like
But...
how
Well,
much
like,
do you keep
yeah.
trying?
Like,
That's
I
what I don't
understand.
understand.
See, in my, like, personally, I'm on the same page. Like, I don't see it as a choice. It's always what's best for the animal.
Yeah.
And that's not something you choose to do. That is, you own the animal. That is what you are obligated to
Yes,
do.
I think when you buy that animal from day dot, like you
Yeah.
should not obviously think about it. You're not going to think about that when you buy an
Yeah.
animal, but it needs to be something as that animal ages.
Yeah.
You need to become more aware of and more comfortable
Yeah, like,
to think about it.
I think talking about it as well is something that, because people they almost get caught off guard and you sort of don't realise that your horse is getting older. You just think he's always been there.
I realise. It keeps me up at night.
Painfully aware.
She's not 4 anymore. She's nearly a teenager. I know, I'm aware.
How many drinks maybe? But like, yeah, it's just, it needs to be, people need to be more familiar with it. And like, but it's compassion as well, you know, you sort of need to be compassionate to understand that the certain people, this animal might be their everything, you know, they might
See,
not have anybody else.
I'm too compassionate to the animal than to be compassionate to the human.
Yeah, I can see
Podcast
that from
people,
you.
podcast people maybe don't know, but I'm not a people person. I'm anti-people, so I can't be compassionate towards somebody that's like, oh, but I love my horse so much. Do you? So why is it suffering?
I just think, you know, some people can be lonely. And you know, if this is all they have, you know,
But they
obviously
can get a new one.
you can't just replace them.
Not replace, like you're not going to get the same thing.
thing
Go,
is-
go and buy a new horse.
I wouldn't even say that. I would say you could go volunteer your time at a rescue.
Yeah, you could do. Yeah, there's
help,
so many.
help people. You know, I know it's
Yeah.
not the same as your own animal, and I understand both of your points. Like, oh, it's like your pride and joy. He's been through probably the worst times of your life, and he's
Yeah.
always been there.
Yep.
But now this is his worst time of his life. You
Yeah.
need to make
the
the
right
right
choice,
decision.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know it's like hard on you to like emotionally understand and like, you know, take that in and process it. But if that's all you have, you can volunteer your time elsewhere.
Yeah.
I think if you're lonely and you still need that, like,
Interaction.
yeah, you could help, you know, and then people would really appreciate that.
Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong, I do agree with you. Like,
You're just more
Point
compassionate
blank.
as a human
Yeah.
than I am.
I think you have to though for your job. Like,
yeah,
you have to have some
you
compassion.
have to deal with a lot of crying people upset
Yeah.
about having to put they're not their horses, their little animals down.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sure,
Well,
I was there with
stuff.
my childhood dog. That's like, I've never had to put a horse down. I'm
Yeah.
so glad I've not been in that position.
Yeah.
But I had to put my childhood dog down a couple of months back.
Yeah.
So like that's how I'm seeing it, and it's like his head was there. He was wanting to stay alive, but his body was
Yeah.
deteriorating before his mind was, and we had to make
Yeah.
that call for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the right decision.
It was sad, yeah. And it seems like my other dog, like I know she's getting old now too, but she's still bright in herself and her body, like slower, but it's still
Yeah.
keeping up with her.
Yeah.
But if it gets to the point where her body slows down more, then you
Yeah.
have to make that call again. And it is hard, but I think as an animal owner that you've loved and cared for these animals for their whole lives, you do have to care for them in the end as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Do the
does-
right thing.
Yeah, it does. That's what it comes down to. Like, you signed up for this when you
Yeah.
bought them. Do you know, it's their welfare.
And those horses when they're a bit older, they're arthritic.
Yeah.
Like that's just how life goes. And then if it's cold and
Yeah.
wet,
And they're
then
stiff and they can barely move their
they're
legs.
stuck in a wee
yeah.
tiny area because with the nature of where we live, things get
Yeah.
wet and they can't go out in the mud because it hurts their joints.
Yeah.
Like if that's just going to be miserable for them, then
Yeah.
Why do I actually feel like I'm getting upset?
I know. I know, it is really sad.
do you want to take a minute?
No.
You okay?
I hate humans and I'm thinking about a dead horse and I get so sad. Where were we? But we're gonna go away from the old, sick, dead
Yes, I think
horses.
we're all kind of in the agreement that if your horse is old and suffering, you should do the kinder thing
Yeah.
and put them to sleep.
There
But then
is-
there's that hard topic, which is similar to what Ellie had said. A young horse that's still wanting to be,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can tell like they want to be here and they're fighting for it. How much do you fight?
Yeah.
Is that what you're
But
wanting to move on
also,
to?
you know, if people didn't, like, don't get me wrong, I did not have the money.
Yeah.
I didn't have the money.
Yeah, you basically
That-
bankrupt yourself.
But that's another really interesting topic to go on. It's like, if you don't have the money,
I
then where do you go?
bankrupt myself.
Yeah.
I
But not everyone can do
See,
that.
because you live at home though, it was
yeah.
easier for
But could
you
you
to do
imagine
that.
you had a mortgage?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
took 2 kids to feed, a car to pay off.
Yeah.
I
you
worked.
know.
I was working, I would say, probably about 80 hours a week.
Yeah, to be able to pay it off.
Yeah, my dad was having to go up to the yard, and like he was mucking him out and feeding him. You were helping out with him because I was having to constantly work, and then the guilt of knowing, God, he's in pain, and I'm not looking after him. But I
Yeah.
can't because I have to work. Do you afford to look after him?
So that's what I'm saying. It's like people that, God forbid, any of you get a big bill like that again, like a colic surgery. I think the last time I was told they were $6,000 up front and they wouldn't operate until they had 50% of that.
Do you
like,
ever
could you just throw $3,000 down?
Do you ever think I have a fund that I put a pot into?
Me too.
Already?
Every month money goes in for
Yeah.
Pepsi.
But I always sit and think, like, I have nightmares about this. I have nightmares about getting phone calls. Do you remember that dream I had about you? So we work in the same place, and I had this dream. It was so vivid. I was like at the back of the building, and Amy works like later shifts than me, and I remember seeing her, and I was like, "What's she doing here? Like, why are you here so early?" And you like ran up to me, and you were like, like, have you not checked your phone? And I was like, no, there's no signal in here. Like, why? And you're like, the guards at the yard are trying to get you. Like, the vet's on his way. Like, it's Benny. Like, you need, like, can you get into Dublin now? And I was like, what? And then I started fighting with you in my sleep because you were like, you can't drive. I have to drive. And I was like, you're going to drive too slow.
Do you think this is like a PTSD dream from all the
probably.
stress of having to deal with all that?
Probably. I see the amount, like, I have so many recurring dreams. I have dreams about, like, people getting a phone call and having to say, like, can you get into Dublin now?
But the thing is, yes, a dream, but that's somebody's reality. This
Yeah.
is what I'm saying, like financially, like that could be another point where people put to sleep.
Yeah.
Because financially they can't afford.
Yeah, all the
Like
investigations.
I'm on a vet page on Facebook, and like I know it's Facebook, so like you take it with a pinch of salt, but they are registered vets that
Yeah.
comment on the posts, and someone's horse stood on a nail, and it went like right into the pedal bone.
Oh.
And the vet, they basically like, what am I looking here? What's the prognosis? Like, how long are they going to be on stall rest and all this? And one of the vets commented going, you will need to have at least $25,000 to pay this. This is what this will cost to get this horse right. And she ended up putting the horse to sleep because she couldn't afford that amount of money.
Yeah, that's sad.
Because that's what the vets were saying. Obviously, that was one on Facebook, but her actual vet that she discussed this with in person must have said
Like,
this is
backed
going
it
to be a
up.
lot of money.
Yeah, like, it's hard because I was able, because I have 2 full-time jobs,
Yeah.
and one of them I work for myself, I can just go, I am working extra hours.
Yeah.
One, overtime is readily available, and the other one I work for me, so I can just decide that I'm working more, I can just book more in. So I was just working myself to the bone.
Yeah.
And like,
pay
you
off
know,
the vet
but
bills.
it
Not
was,
everybody has that option if they have
Yeah.
kids or whatever.
As I was saying, if you had a
Exactly.
mortgage and all to pay, and your horse is
Yeah.
sitting there with at a minimum £3,000 to £6,000 vet bill.
Yeah.
I know we're probably all of us, if we were in that position, we would find a means to do that because we are
Yeah.
very privileged and we are very lucky. But it's like
Yeah.
not everyone has that.
Yeah.
And is that another option of when it's okay? Not okay,
But then that wouldn't be
put to sleep.
euthanasia for the benefit of the horse. That's
No,
euthanasia for the
'cause-
benefit of the owner.
But
Not
also-
benefit, maybe is the wrong word there, but
Because
But
financial
could-
stress, yeah.
Yeah.
But could you argue that that would still be the benefit of the horse because you can't sell it,
Yeah.
and so do you just let it suffer?
yeah. And
Like,
if you do
like
sell a horse
like
with
slow,
issues,
painful death, is,
Yeah.
you know, if you don't treat it, that's probably what it's going to
Yeah.
go through.
Although the thing is, vets they will offer a payment plan,
Yeah.
which I like broadcast this to everybody, because if you feel like you're trapped and you want to make a call and you feel like you can't make the call, get asked for a payment plan.
Yeah.
There's no shame in that. Like, vets know
yeah.
that these are
Yeah.
massive bills. Like, do you know,
They're
people
aware
are
of it.
aware that it's dear.
It's
And-
good that vets offer that.
Yeah, but
It's something I wouldn't have known because I, thank God, have not been in that position.
Yeah.
But it's like people are aware that it costs loads of money and they know that you can't just go here,
Yeah.
here's my entire bank account.
Yeah.
So it is an option, and you just there's no harm in asking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you know
but
what
you
I
also
mean?
do have to make sure that it is
Financially
right.
viable.
Yeah, it's viable.
Yeah.
You are doing the right thing. You are making the right decision.
And you are making the right decision by the
Yeah.
horse. Like if you're throwing thousands and thousands and thousands at a horse.
It's never going to make it.
But there's also
Yeah.
no harm in getting a second opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
That
And
too.
professionals shouldn't be offended.
No.
No.
Like if I spoke to my vet about getting a second opinion and he had no issues with it whatsoever. Do you know,
Yeah.
I like the more eyes the merrier sort of thing.
Yeah.
Fresh ideas bouncing.
What you were saying, Amy, about for the benefit of the horse, because I feel like we're talking about maybe the benefits of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to go back on to the benefits of the horse?
Yeah, I was going to say another one I wanted to bring up was behavioural euthanasia.
Yeah.
So is this like a naughty
Yeah,
horse?
a naughty horse or
Yeah.
one that is like crazy, can't be handled.
Put
Is
them
it
to sleep.
is it right to put them to sleep
So would
if they're
you
dangerous?
would you say you think that they warrant veterinary investigation first?
Yes.
Before?
Personally, I would, but I think I don't know.
But then that also stems back into the financial topic because if you're needing to put a horse through, what are those big machines?
MRI.
MRI.
Yeah, MRIs machines, and then there's another
There are
version.
thousands.
Yeah.
MRIs.
And then, potentially traveling them, like for us, our biggest hospital is probably Troy Town or UCD.
Yeah.
And, trying to get them to stay down there, your MRIs, your nerve blocks, you're doing everything.
Yeah.
Like, financially, is that viable if you have a really dangerous horse?
See for behavioural euthanasia that I can't remember where I heard this story, but someone was saying, it's a dog charity and I can't think of the name of it. Never put a healthy dog down. Mm-hmm. There was
Do you think that would never put a healthy horse down if it's just a bit dangerous, but it's perfectly fine?
there was this someone definitely told me this. If not, we can use it as a case study that I've made up in my head. It was like it was a dog who was in a cage and it could not be out of this cage or a kennel or whatever it was because it was just rabid.
Nah, like a
And-
nasty dog biting.
Yeah, and this charity was sort of saying never put a healthy dog down. So we aren't going to put this healthy dog down. It was physically healthy.
Yeah.
But he was just a bit
But
behavioural.
I argued that it was mentally not healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I wrote an assignment on it at some stage. But I was like, I would argue that isn't healthy. It's physically healthy.
Yeah. Mental health isn't there.
Yeah.
But then, I don't know, are horses like that, or are horses only dangerous when they're showing signs of pain and stress?
Yeah. It needs to be, I think it needs to be investigated before you make any decisions like that.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's only fair because, like, no harm. I can be times.
You just want me to put you down when you're being a bit...
Maybe.
No, but I know,
Like,
what
you know-
I mean, you know, you can do the minimum. You could do like a lameness workup and see if there's anything
Yeah.
glaringly obvious.
But it's like humans as well. Like, see if
If you're sore, you're grouchy.
Yeah.
You don't want to be bothered with. Like,
And then
especially
hot horses as well will
Yeah.
be even more reactive to that if they're
Yeah.
really sporty,
if your
really
back
talented.
sore,
They're nuts.
could you imagine someone sitting on your back if your
Yeah.
your bones are pinching?
You
Like,
can,
you
like-
wouldn't want someone sitting on you.
you can vouch for me, I'm horrible whenever my back hurts. I'm not a nice person.
So if your horse is very dangerous, a quote where, you know, you can't even put a leg over it because it's throwing you off and you can't lead it to the field because it's bucking rear and spinning, you know, it's getting dangerous to handle. Like, I think the least you can do for that animal is to investigate it
It's
before
trying to
putting
tell
it
you
to sleep.
something.
Yeah,
tell you
it's talking to you. It's
Yeah.
literally screaming
Yeah.
and you're not listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then that leads on to a whole different thing, doesn't it? Can a horse be naughty or dangerous? Well, they can be dangerous, but can a horse be naughty?
That should
Yeah.
be for another topic.
Yeah, definitely, because we could go on about that
Yeah.
for 4 days.
Yeah, but for the euthanasia side, yeah.
But then, so behavioural euthanasia, you maybe vote for no then on that? You'd say investigate it first?
I would say an investigation is definitely warranted, but I
Yeah.
think it depends on what the results are to be if these are fixable
Yeah.
issues. Financially, can you afford to keep up with that? Like I said, there's worse fates for a horse than being put to sleep.
Yeah.
I don't think you should be selling a horse that is that dangerous because it
Yeah.
will end up from hands to hands, and I think that is worse than just putting him to sleep.
And people think, like, putting them to sleep is this big, bad thing.
I don't think
And
it
it's
is.
not. It's actually quite a kind thing to do.
Yeah, like my last horse, it was a lovely sunny day. And he was
Yeah.
in his field. He was at home where he'd been for donkeys of years.
Yeah.
Surrounded probably by love, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was in the bluebells.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like it was a nice sunny morning, and he
He had a lovely end.
yeah,
could have
do you
been
know,
worse.
it-
But that's
yeah,
what
we
that's
let
what
him
they should
suffer.
have, especially when, you know, this horse has been a part of your life and, you know, their owner's life for so long. Like,
Yeah.
it was the nicest, kindest thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I'm saying, for a behavioural issue, you shouldn't be selling horses on like that because they usually will go for cheap, and you know someone bad's going to pick it up
And it's
they're
going to try and beat out of them.
or dope it, and it's going to get passed
Yep.
on to some novice, and they're going to end up getting hurt.
Yeah.
And then that horse is going to end up worse, in my opinion. And you do see it happening. Like, I've now never seen it in my own personal life, but you hear of it happening, and you probably have a friend that's happened to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then it ends up somebody else has to make that hard call. So
Yeah.
you're just passing the burden on to somebody else. But
Yeah,
if it's your horse,
responsible owners. Yeah,
it's your
not-
responsibility.
Is there any other types of euthanasia then? So we have behavioural, we have horses in old age and giving them like a dignified end. And you were talking about potentially euthanizing for veterinary, obviously like a bad prognosis, and then
Yeah.
do you investigate or do you? It's probably similar to behavioural in a way.
I think everything warrants an investigation.
Yeah,
If you can financially do it, like, listen, don't get me wrong, if it's legs hanging off.
yeah, I think they're different calls,
Do you
like
know-
traumatic injuries.
Yeah, but if you can, if we're unsure of a prognosis, or if there seems like it can come right, and you can financially cover it, always investigate. I think
But if
you
you
owe
can't
it.
financially afford it,
You're better to put to sleep. Than
Yeah,
to sell
it's
on.
okay to just
Yeah.
let them go.
I
And
know they may be young and you know they may probably bred to do all these amazing things, but at the end of the day, a horse is a horse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't know that they have mummy that did this, daddy
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
did that. All they know is I want to be with my friend
Yeah.
and I want a full tummy.
Yeah.
Like, you
And then
know.
if they're sore, all they also know is ouch.
Yeah.
So it's kinder to be put to sleep.
it's
than to-
kinder, and it's an
for your own
okay.
selfish gain of trying to keep this horse. Yeah.
It's okay to do if that's what needs to be done. Like, you should be
I
no
agree.
no guilt.
Yeah.
Should never
Nobody
be
should be
felt.
guilting you
Yeah.
for putting your horse to
No.
sleep. They're not in your shoes. They
Yeah.
have no say on it.
Exactly.
And in the end of the day, you know your animal.
Yep.
Yep.
do you know-
exactly. And you're not going to make the wrong call. You like it's not going to be.
If
No.
you love your animal, you're going to make the right call. No matter what call it is, you're going to know yourself
Yeah.
that was the right decision.
And I know you're always going to have that, oh, could I have done more? but you did what you thought was best,
Yeah.
and you listened to your professionals and their advice for the specific situation at that time.
Yeah.
So I don't think you should let that could I have done
Yeah,
more
like,
settle in. I
that's
know it's probably
right.
natural.
Yeah.
but you
It is,
should-
yeah.
You
But
shouldn't let it guilt you.
if you love that animal, you of course you're going to listen to your professionals.
Yeah.
You're going to take everything into consideration. You're going to think about your finances. You're going to do everything, and you're going to make a decision.
That's going to be the right one.
An evidence-based decision.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the right one.
Yeah.
If you love your animal, obviously its welfare is going to be at the forefront of your mind.
Yeah.
It is the right decision.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It just is. So now we're going to move on to our expert, Serena. For this section, we have Morgan from Dorks with the Horse on TikTok.
Hi, I'm Morgan.
I'm Chloe.
And we're from Dorks with the Horse, and we used to co-own our horse Ken together. We owned him for about a year, and unfortunately about 2 months ago we had to have him put to sleep due to intermittent lameness. He'd been lame on and off most of the time that we'd had him. As it turns out, through several investigations, he had really poor angulation through his feet, the bones in his feet. We tried lots of things, box rest. We even went down the route of investigating whether it was an abscess that we could poultice. We tried lots of things, and in the end he was lame on at least 3 legs. So he was basically walking on 1 leg, and in this time, like Chloe said, we'd been through so much. He'd also been on box rest for tendon injury.
We rehabbed the tendon injury. He worked really well on that, and then he injured himself. We think over Christmas we had not much turnout. Not much exercise. He'd been for a little hike. He'd been out in the field for a couple of hours one morning. He just came in crippled.
Absolutely crippled, wasn't he? Like, awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did have to make the really difficult decision to have him put to sleep.
We didn't feel like there was much option really. When we spoke to the vet about it, the vet almost offered to put him to sleep on the spot for us there and then. I had to discuss it with Morgan.
Because unfortunately I wasn't there at this time, because we kind of knew it was serious, didn't we?
Yeah.
We knew it wasn't looking great.
We were hoping to be able to retire him, but after having that lameness workup with the vet that day and him being very bleak about his outcome, I asked if he could be field sound to retire to a field and he could be a pet, and he was like, not really.
The chances of that ever happening were very, very slim, and the vet told us that even if he was able to go out onto a field eventually, the chances of him re-injuring himself and becoming lame again were very, very high. So even if he was able to do that, then it would be really, really slim that he'd be able to live out for the rest of his life, and he wouldn't be intermittently lame and uncomfortable for the rest of his life.
So we'd had x-rays on that day, and that confirmed that basically the angle through his feet, the bones in his feet were just awful. One was the worst one was pointing upwards. His pedal bone was facing upwards basically. Then there was obviously the risk, the possibility, the real possibility that basically soft tissues were completely damaged beyond repair. We had a little bit of a Hail Mary with the possibility of doing some remedial shoeing. When the vet talked me through the process, it was brutal. It was cutting his toe off, wedging his foot up, and he said he'd be uncomfortable for at least 6 to 8. If he was going to come sound, he might do, but he'd be uncomfortable for the whole time.
We knew as well that Ken wouldn't have coped with that because, for example, we had a road stud put in his back feet, didn't we? Which were not even a centimetre out, and we had them put in and we had to have them taken out within 3 days because he was lame, wasn't he? Straight away we walked him out and we were like, oh my god, he's lame with these on. So we knew that he wouldn't have coped with the remedial shoeing, so for us it wasn't really an option. And
we hadn't even got the option of him being a little bit unsound and being able to bute him.
No,
because the amount of boot he would have been on would have been ridiculous.
Yeah,
and he would never really be truly comfortable. Now I understand for some horses and horse owners that being on bute is a perfectly reasonable and acceptable thing, but for how uncomfortable he would have been for the rest of his life, I couldn't.
No, we just didn't want to put him through that because we knew he'd been uncomfortable for a significant period of time as well. You know, he'd been he'd got a tendon injury, but he'd also this obviously isn't an issue that just happens overnight. He'd obviously been relatively uncomfortable with this for a long time, and that is likely why he'd been intermittently lame for the whole time that we'd owned him. So, you know, in theory, if we'd have had x-rays before when we bought him, we may have picked up on this issue because it was already probably there. So obviously we don't regret it at all. It was the best decision for Ken. We didn't do that for ourselves because we would have loved to have retired him in a field, but we did it for Ken because we knew that he wouldn't have coped with remedial shoeing, and personally we as co-owners, we didn't think it was fair to put him through that for the slight possibility that it would have been okay because he'd been uncomfortable for so long. So yeah, thanks for watching.
So thank you to our experts for giving your input on the matter. We know it's a really hard topic to talk about, so we do appreciate everybody coming on, and we know it's a very sensitive one, so thank you. So for this episode, we're not going to do a game, obviously, because it's a bit of a heavy topic, it's a bit disrespectful. So for the listeners take the reins sections, we asked our listeners, we put a post up on the social media, just asking, to tell us the stories about horses that you've lost in the past. Tell us about them, share your memories with them, or equally share with us how you dealt with the grief and how you coped with that loss. So we wanted to dedicate this episode to all of our past horses.
For this week's listeners take the reins sections, we're skipping the pony games as it just doesn't feel right on such a heavy topic. So we're diving straight into listener submissions. So we asked our listeners on Instagram if they could send us some advice on how to cope with horse loss and what they went through and how they dealt with it, just so it could maybe help some others out there, as it's not something that anybody should have to go through alone. Our first submission is from listener and friend of the podcast, Katie Ann.
We had 2 horses that we had to make the decision to euthanize early. My first wee pony, Zeus, we'd sold him back to his owner and then bought him back about a year later, and when he came back it was clear that something had affected him. His behaviour just wasn't right. We made the decision to retire him, and he went out to a field as a companion. We found though, like a few months into his retirement, his behaviour was just really strange. Like he didn't know the way around the field. He was relying on the other horses to kind of guide him. It started where he began to find the water drinker. So we made the decision early to euthanize him just because of everything going on. My second horse, it was my aunt's horse Gucci. He had previously suffered from lymphangitis. At the time we discussed with the vet's euthanization. However, he was really perked up and he was eating and he was otherwise completely fine. And he kept fighting. So he continued on for another 3 years until there was an incident in the field where he got quite stressed out and he just wasn't himself. He wasn't perked up. He was quite lethargic. We made the decision for him to come home to the house and for his last few days, and he was euthanized at home with everyone around him. He just felt doing it earlier it was better for the both of them rather than more significant incidents happening. With Zeus, the only way I was able to kind of cope with it was remembering that we were doing the right thing. He was struggling himself, and it was the only way to be able to cope with it is just recognising that it was the right thing to do. We'd had him for years. He'd given us so much, and it was only fair that we returned to see him. I think with Gucci, it really did affect us, himself hard, and my aunt a lot. There was days where it just felt like a lot, far too much to cope with. It was not the brightest few days. Found looking at photos and talking about him and focusing on, I have another pony, focusing on her really relieved a lot of the pressure we had. A lot of it's just remembering why you made the decision for euthanization. It's the only way that you're able to kind of cope with it. I think for advice, for those who are going through loss, is seeking support from other people. So that's friends, your family. There's even support groups online for people who've went through pet loss, who are grieving, and speaking to other people who've went through similar situations can help so much. Giving yourself time and grace to mourn the loss, acknowledging what you're feeling, acknowledging how long you've known. It's like grieving a person. With animals it's just the same. I think also just remembering it's always better a day too early rather than a day too late.
Our next submission is from Charlie.
My mare that I lost, I had her for 13 years. Thoroughbred, wonderful, beautiful, amazing. And she was a month shy of her 20th birthday when she left me. So rewind to 2023. She broke out in hives in winter. Had the vet out, had blood work done, had a Cushing's test first. That came back negative. Blood test came back that she was slightly anemic, but nothing untoward. The hives were still present, so had her allergy tested, all came back negative, which tests for environmental factors and feed. So started her on 60 antihistamine tablets a day. The hives came and went until about April. And in that time, I'd moved yards, I'd changed paddocks, I'd done a complete elimination diet. And then once I moved yards, the hives went. I thought, great, nailed it. Summer was great. She broke out a couple of times, but that was more heat related. Fast forward now to December 2024, she broke out in hives again. Really itchy, really uncomfortable, etc. Vet came out, did bloods again, nothing untowards blood work wise. Her limbs started to swell up, so she got lymphangitis. Had skin biopsies done to test her for autoimmune deficiencies, anything untoward like that. That all came back negative. The vet advised me to do a course of steroids, which I was a bit dubious about because of her age. So she had the 10-day course of Equipred, which reduced the hives by about 70-80%. Once she finished the Equipred, the hives came back with a vengeance. Didn't want to be in, but didn't want to be out. Just really didn't know what to do with herself. So I had a very pragmatic conversation with the vet, and the vet said to me, it's a chronic progressive illness. We can't treat it because we don't know what it is. We have no maintenance for it because we don't know what it is. We can't plan for it because we don't know when it's going to go away or when it's going to come back or if it's going to go away at all whatsoever. And with the age of her, is she going to have a quality of life as she gets older? The answer is probably no. And from a veterinary point of view, we have exhausted our options. So it was more of a kindness to let her go on a good day when she'd eaten a nice breakfast and had lots of apples and hugs and didn't really know why I was being so wonderful. In terms of coping, I'm not particularly coping. I have seen the doctor because I had physical effects from my grief process. He has diagnosed me with anxiety, stress-related illnesses and high functional depression, which I'm seeking counselling for, and the physical effects I am medicating with prescription tablets. But I'm not taking any antidepressants or any antipsychotics or anything like that, which I'm grateful for. So I have since bought another filly who has filled half of the huge void that my old girl left behind. And she was a little bit heaven sent. I'm a big believer in fate, and I feel like she was sent to me for various reasons, and she is helping me a great deal.
So Charlie mentioned some counselling in her story, and we asked her a quick follow-up question whether she would recommend this to people who may be struggling, and here's what she had to say. I absolutely would recommend counselling. While it might not be for everyone, I was fortunate enough to find a counsellor who is horsey, so we share a common interest, and she has given me so many ways to soothe myself whilst at work and day to day. But it is also an absolutely amazing outlet on a weekly basis where nobody judges me for being sad or upset or pissed off at the world, and nobody condescends or belittles me because they think I'm weak. For that 1 hour, I feel like I'm free and in an environment that is safe enough to bare my soul. Our next submission is from Tara.
I got Cosmo in January of 2018. He was a gorgeous, big, gangly 5-year-old Dutch warmblood that my yard owner had up for sale that I fell in love with. I would say we had 2 solid great years with no vet visits or anything other than your standard jabs. Then came the lymphangitis. At the time he was in the stable, I'd gotten the girl the feeding that morning, noticed his leg had went up like a balloon. So obviously she gave me a call. I came, let him out of the stable. He would not put his leg down whatsoever. Vet came out, diagnosed him with lymphangitis. We got antibiotics, painkillers, stuff like that, and then it was recommended to be walking and out in the field more. Over the course of nearly 7 years I had him, he had on and off bouts of lymphangitis, but I always had a niggling feeling in the back of my head that something else was going on. His back legs always just seemed not 100%, even when the lymphangitis wasn't there. I spent thousands on physios, chiropractors, steroid injections, fancy shoes, lessons, water treadmill stays, heat therapy, not to mention the 6 months I long ran him 6 days a week hoping to build strength back into his hind legs. He just wasn't getting better, he was getting worse. I rang my vet and did a full lameness test, and that's when I got the news. Wobblers. He said that he would never be ridden again, which would be fine, that wouldn't bother me whatsoever. He would be fine as a field ornament as long as he's able to comfortably lie down, get up, eat, run. I then obviously had to tell him about what had happened 2 weeks before I got him out. he had went down in the stable and couldn't get back up due to his back legs. They just seemed to completely stop working. We had to get him up with a tractor after four hours of trying to get him up with about 6 different people. He obviously then recommended the Cosmo was put to sleep. I knew that this was the right thing to do, but that didn't change the heartbreak of it. I just couldn't have him live a life where he couldn't lie down in the field without the worry of getting stuck, or God forbid someone leading him somewhere and him losing his balance and going right on top of the person. I had a girl at the yard at the time tell me a day too early is better than a day too late, and that did help me a bit. It's now been a year and a half since he was put to sleep, and it still hurts like it was happening yesterday. I haven't ridden or overly interacted with another horse since, and I don't think I could, because just looking at a horse just brings back bad memories. After he was put to sleep, I don't know, I remember the thought of not knowing what I was going to do, just like at all. I didn't know who I was without him. Like what did I do? I went to the yard 6 in the morning every morning before work, and I went straight after work, wasn't home till 10 o'clock. Like what did I physically do with myself? He was literally part of me, because I got him when I was 15 and he passed away when I was 21, and I kind of went a bit into the going a bit crazy, with the partying and stuff, and try to distract myself. I definitely think that if you are like me and you're not going to get back into horses again, that you need to find some sort of outlet. Like with me, it was the gym. I needed something to fill my day. It did distract me, but my advice is, maybe not too great, but it's never, that pain of losing him is never gonna go away. You just have to distract yourself and not let it consume you. But, you still have to work, you still have to pay bills. All you can do is think about the good memories that you've got, which I have got plenty of.
Thank you very much for the listeners for submitting their stories and for giving some advice to any other listeners out there who may be going through this. I often feel as though horse loss, any pet loss in general, can kind of be looked down upon, and people don't realise that the grief is real grief. So we just thought having something like this in the podcast is maybe just a helpful little outlet to hear other people's stories, to hear that other people have gone through and hear their advice. So as everybody said, sort of, you can seek counselling, talk to your friends, talk to your family if they're willing to listen, and just remember, a day too early is better than a day too late. So thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you very much to the listeners for sending in their stories. It's lovely to hear about all those horses and some tips on dealing with grief and loss.
Thank you very much for watching and listening to this episode. I've been Robin, and you can find me at RHShowjumping on Instagram and Robin Hartley on TikTok.
I've been Ellie, and you can find me at Ellie and Ralph One on Instagram and TikTok.
And I've been Amy, and you can find me at Amy Copa at TikTok.
And you can find the podcast at the Sassy Marriage Podcast on Instagram and TikTok.
And YouTube and Spotify.
Did you already know that?
Because you're listening to it now.